Hi, I'm Eleanor Hart. What if I told you that the cruelest joke my family ever played on me became my ticket to $100 million at my college graduation? While my twin sister Emily got a house, I got a lottery ticket. They laughed. I cried. But 6 months later, that dismissed piece of paper changed everything. This is the story of how I went from family scapegoat to financially free, and why I chose to cut them off forever. I am 23 years old, and the day of my college graduation was supposed to be one of the most beautiful memories of my life. But for my family, even that day turned into a cruel test of love and favoritism. On the crowded campus, with cheers filling the air in front of friends, professors, and relatives, my parents stepped forward and handed my twin sister Emily a luxurious box. Inside was the key to a brand new house, a reward for this special child. As for me, the one who had worked tirelessly to pay my own tuition, I received a thin envelope. When I opened it, my heart sank. It was nothing but a lottery ticket. My mother smiled as if it were some harmless little joke and told me to try your luck. Maybe it will change your life. Emily laughed mockingly, saying I was better suited for chance than for carrying any real responsibility. I forced back my tears, but inside, my heart shattered into pieces. What they did not realize was that the very ticket they dismissed would become the doorway that changed my entire life. I want to tell you everything from my unfair childhood to the moment I stood tall and spoke the words that left my whole family speechless. But before I dive deeper into the story, let me ask you one thing. Where are you listening from today? I grew up in a family that looked perfect from the outside. Two-story house, white picket fence in Columbus, Ohio. The whole suburban dream, right? Our front yard had Mom's prized rose garden. Our living room walls were covered with family photos that told a carefully crafted story of happiness. But inside those walls, I learned early that being born second meant being second best forever. The favoritism started the day we came home from the hospital. Emily was precious, fragile, special, the child they almost lost. I was just there, the easy one, the one who didn't need extra attention because I'd come into the world without any drama. Mom kept a baby book for each of us, but Emily's was thick as a novel. Every first word, every smile, every tiny milestone documented in Mom's careful handwriting. Mine had the basics. Birth weight. First word, which was more, ironically enough. And maybe a dozen photos. When I asked about it at age 10, Mom just smiled that practice smile and said, "You were such an easy baby, sweetheart. You didn't need as much fussing over." But I did need it. God, how I needed it. Emily and I were identical twins. But that's where the similarities ended. Physically, we were mirror images. The differences started small. Emily got the bigger bedroom because she, quote, needed more space for her things. I got the room next to the noisy water heater. Emily got new clothes for each school year. I got her hand-me-downs, usually a size too big so I could, quote, grow into them. When I complained, Dad would ruffle my hair and say, "You make everything look good, kiddo. Emily needs the extra help." School conferences were the worst. I'd sit in the hallway outside the classroom, listening to my parents gush over Emily's latest achievement. A B+ in math. A decent score on a spelling test. Anything that proved their investment in her was paying off. When it was my turn, the meetings were shorter. "Eleanor's doing fine," Mom would say quickly. "She's always been self-sufficient." Self-sufficient. That became my label, my brand. Eleanor doesn't need help. Eleanor figures things out. Eleanor is strong. But I wasn't strong. I was 8 years old, sitting in my smaller bedroom, wondering why love seemed to come with conditions I couldn't meet. "Why can't I have something special too?" I whispered to Mom. While Emily was distracted by her new treasures, Mom pulled me aside, her voice patient but tired. "Eleanor, honey, you have to understand. Emily needs these things more than you do. She's more sensitive. You're tough. You can handle disappointment better. Tough. Another label to add to self-sufficient. Eleanor is tough. Eleanor doesn't need special things. Eleanor can handle being forgotten. But here's the thing about being labeled tough at 10 years old. You start to believe it's true. You start to swallow your disappointment, to push down your needs, to smile and nod and pretend you don't care. Because if you're not tough, if you crack even a little, then you're not even fulfilling the one role your family has given you. School events were another stage where the inequality played out with painful precision. When we were in 5th grade, both Emily and I made it into the school talent show. Emily was going to sing. She had a sweet voice and Mom had been paying for lessons. I planned to do a magic act I'd been practicing for months. The night of the show, the auditorium was packed with families. Emily performed beautifully, hitting every note. Our parents cheered so loudly I thought they might wake the dead. When she came off stage, Dad swept her up in a huge hug, telling everyone within earshot how proud he was of his, quote, little songbird. Then it was my turn. I was nervous but excited. I'd been perfecting my tricks for weeks, and I knew they were good. The act went perfectly. I made coins disappear and reappear, transformed colored scarves into flowers. And for my finale, I made my assistant levitate using a carefully hidden support system I'd built myself. The audience loved it. They clapped and cheered. And I felt, for just a moment, like I was floating too. I searched the audience for my parents' faces, desperate to see that same proud glow I'd seen during Emily's performance. Mom was checking her phone. Dad was talking to another parent. They'd missed my entire act afterward. When Emily was still basking in compliments and I was quietly packing up my magic supplies, Mom finally approached me. "That was nice, sweetie," she said distractedly. "Very clever." Clever. Not amazing. Not incredible. Not, quote, "I'm so proud of you I could burst." Just clever. That night, lying in my bed, I made a decision that would shape the rest of my childhood. I stopped trying to impress them. If they weren't going to see me anyway, why kill myself trying to be noticed? But the favoritism went deeper than just attention and gifts. It shaped how we were allowed to exist in our own home. Emily's emotions were always valid, always important. If she was upset, the whole house revolved around making her feel better. If she was excited, we all had to share in her joy. If she was scared, we all had to accommodate her fears. Me? I learned to keep my emotions small and manageable. If I was upset, I was being dramatic. If I was excited, I was being too loud. If I was scared, I was being silly. By middle school, I'd learned to be invisible. I did my homework without being asked, kept my room clean without reminders, helped with chores without complaints. I became the perfect, low-maintenance child. And you know what I got for it? Nothing. Not recognition, not gratitude, not love, just the expectation that this was how I should be. Meanwhile, Emily continued to be celebrated for the bare minimum. She'd load the dishwasher once without being asked, and Mom would praise her for being so helpful. I'd do it every day for a month, and it was just expected. The academic disparity was particularly painful. I was naturally good at school. Not just good, but exceptional. I read voraciously, wrote stories that my teachers called advanced for my age, and consistently scored in the top percentile on standardized tests. Emily struggled more with academics, but she was encouraged and supported at every turn. When Emily brought home a report card with mostly B's and one A, it was celebrated with dinner at her favorite restaurant and a new book she'd been wanting. When I brought home straight A's, Mom would glance at it and say, "Good job, honey." I expected nothing less. Expected nothing less. Those words stung more than any criticism could have. They meant that my excellence wasn't special. It was baseline. It was what I owed them for existing. By high school, the patterns were so entrenched they felt like natural law. Emily was the golden child who needed support and celebration. I was the achiever who needed nothing and should be grateful for what I got. It wasn't until I was 16 that I fully understood why. The answer, I learned, is that you don't. You can't. So you stop trying. But stopping trying doesn't stop hurting. The worst part wasn't even the favoritism itself. It was how it taught me to see myself. By the time I graduated high school, I truly believed I was worth less than Emily. Not different, not equally valuable in different ways. Actually worth less. I believed I deserved less attention, less investment, less love. I carried that belief with me to college, where it would shape every choice I made and every relationship I built. When you grow up believing you're not worth investing in, you stop expecting people to invest in you. You become grateful for scraps, tolerant of neglect, and suspicious of genuine kindness. It would take years and one very unexpected lottery ticket to teach me that my parents' inability to see my worth had nothing to do with my actual value. I was not a child without feelings. I noticed, I remembered, and I endured it quietly. I still smiled, still tried to behave, but inside, every small wound slowly turned into scars. Many times I asked my mother, "Why does Emily always get more?" She never hesitated, answering with chilling ease, "Because she's more special." Those words cut into me like a cold blade. More special. And what about me? What was I in their eyes but a faded shadow? When I was 12, our class was asked to bring new school supplies for the coming year. Emily was given a designer purple backpack stuffed with fresh notebooks, rulers, and pencils. I had only my old worn-out bag with yellowed paper notebooks and a few cheap promotional pens. I quietly pushed it under my desk, hoping no one would notice, but inside I burned with shame. That night, I asked my mother once more why things had to be so different. Her answer was the same as always. "You're the older sister. You have to give way. Your sister deserves more." So, I learned silence. I learned to swallow the bitterness of unfairness because whenever I spoke up, my father would shout that I was selfish, that I didn't care for my sister. Emily never missed a chance to mock me either, often shrugging and saying, "You should be used to it by now. You'll never get more than me." To her, it was a joke. But to me, it was a cruel truth. That was my childhood. A chain of days spent in the shadows, always told to be more understanding, to endure more, while my twin sister was spoiled and protected like a precious jewel. I still remember the feeling of sitting alone in a dark room, clutching an old book to my chest, whispering to myself that one day I would break free from this cycle of favoritism. But back then I was just a child, not yet aware that these wounds would follow me into adulthood, only to erupt years later on the very day of my graduation, the day I should have finally been celebrated like anyone else. When we entered high school, the differences between Emily and me became not just clearer but institutionalized. High school was supposed to be where kids started building their independence, discovering their passions, figuring out who they were beyond their families. For Emily, it became 4 more years of being cushioned and supported. For me, it became boot camp for adult disappointment. Both are girls. Equal credit for vastly unequal roles. That night, I realized something that would stick with me for years. My achievements would never be just mine. They would always be filtered through the lens of how they affected Emily, how they fit into the family narrative, how they served the myth that both daughters were equally special. But the real wake-up call came junior year, during college planning season. Emily's 16th birthday party is seared into my memory like a brand. Mom had been planning it for months. Not weeks. Months. The theme was, quote, "Sweet 16 Princess." Our backyard was transformed into something out of a fairy tale. White tents with twinkling lights. Round tables with pink linens. A DJ. A photo booth with props. And a cake that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. The guest list included Emily's entire friend group, plus extended family, plus neighbors, plus kids from school who barely knew her but got invited anyway because Mom wanted it to be the party of the year. I helped set up, of course. I always helped. I arranged centerpieces, hung lights, and set up the gift table. When guests started asking where my decorations were, Mom would laugh and say, "Oh, Eleanor's not really the party type. She prefers intimate celebrations." Intimate celebrations. That was code for, we didn't plan anything for Eleanor. The party was in full swing. maybe 50 people milling around our backyard, when Dad disappeared into the garage. Emily was opening gifts, surrounded by friends, genuinely happy and grateful for each one. Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile watching her joy. She was my sister after all, and seeing her happy did make me happy, even if it hurt. Then Dad emerged from the garage, and the crowd went silent. He was driving a brand new red Honda Civic. Dealer plates still on it. That new car smell wafting through the open windows. The car had a giant white bow on the roof and a sign in the windshield that read, quote, "Sweet 16, Emily." The crowd erupted. Emily screamed, actually screamed, and ran to the car like it was a long-lost friend. She ran her hands over the paint, peered inside at the pristine interior, and then burst into tears of pure joy. "Is this really mine?" she kept asking, as if she couldn't believe it. Dad handed her the keys with a flourish. "Only the best for our princess." The rest of the party became about the car. People took turns sitting in it. Emily gave tours of the interior, and Dad spent an hour explaining all the safety features to other parents. I took photos, served cake, and smiled until my face hurt. That night, after all the guests had gone home and the dishes were washed, I helped Emily move the car into the garage. She was still giddy, planning her first solo drive, talking about how she'd finally be able to get to school without depending on anyone. Without depending on anyone. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Aren't you excited?" she asked as we walked back into the house. "Your birthday is in 3 days. I wonder what they got you." I wondered too. After a car, what was left? Jewelry? A trip? College fund contribution? For 3 days, I let myself imagine possibilities I'd never dared dream of. My birthday morning arrived with Ohio's typical March weather. Gray. Cold. Unwelcoming. I woke up to the sound of Emily starting her car in the garage. The engine purring to life, like a contented cat. She was driving herself to school for the first time, and I could hear the excitement in her voice as she called goodbye to Mom. I, meanwhile, bundled up for another freezing morning at the bus stop. Breakfast was subdued. Mom made pancakes, my favorite, and Dad gave me a card with $20 in it. "Happy birthday, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair like I was still 10. "Is this it?" I asked, looking around for more gifts, more ceremony, more something. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. "Well," Mom said carefully, "we did get you something else." She disappeared into the pantry and emerged with a backpack. A nice backpack, sure, but clearly from the discount store. I could see the markdown sticker still on the bottom. "It's for college," Dad explained. "You'll need something sturdy for carrying all those books." A backpack. After Emily got a car, I got a backpack. "But I won't be in college for 2 years," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "Time flies," Mom said brightly. "It's good to be prepared." I stared at that backpack. Functional, practical, sensible, and something inside me just broke. Not dramatically, not with tears or shouting, but quietly, like a hairline crack in a window that you don't notice until the whole thing shatters. "Thank you," I said, "because that's what good daughters do. It's very practical." Practical. The story of my life. That afternoon, as I waited in the cold for the bus home from school, I watched Emily drive past in her shiny red car. Music playing. Windows down despite the chill. Living her best life. She saw me at the bus stop and waved enthusiastically, genuinely happy to see me. She wasn't cruel. She never was. The favoritism wasn't her fault. She was just a kid too, living the life our parents created for her. But in that moment, watching her drive away while I stood shivering at a bus stop on my own birthday, the disparity felt cosmic. From that day forward, every morning started the same way. Emily would fire up her car, adjust her mirrors, choose her music, and drive to school in climate-controlled comfort. I would bundle up in layers, trudge to the bus stop in the dark, and wait for a bus that was sometimes late, sometimes overcrowded, always cold. Those mornings became a meditation on inequality, standing in the pre-dawn darkness, breath visible in the frigid air. I had plenty of time to think about fairness, about love, about what it meant to be worth investing in. Sometimes Emily would offer me a ride, especially on particularly brutal weather days. But accepting felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that I needed her charity. So I'd decline politely and wait for my bus, pride being the only thing I had that was entirely my own. Looking back, those bus stop mornings might have been the most formative moments of my childhood. Standing alone in the cold, watching my breath form clouds in the darkness, I learned that some people get cars and some people get backpacks. Some people get invested in, and some people get expected to figure it out. I learned that love isn't always equal, that families have favorites, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop expecting fairness and start building resilience. But most importantly, I learned that I was on my own. Not because my parents didn't love me, but because their love came with conditions and limitations I could never meet. Emily would always be the miracle baby they almost lost. I would always be the sturdy one who didn't need as much. Those lessons would serve me well in college, where I'd discover just how alone I really was. High school became my training ground for disappointment, but also for resilience. While Emily filled her schedule with piano lessons, art classes, tennis club, and drama society, all funded by mom and dad, I learned to find opportunity in the margins. I got a job at 15, working weekends at Mrs. Patterson's flower shop downtown. It wasn't glamorous work, sweeping floors, watering plants, making simple arrangements under her watchful eye. But it was mine. The money I earned was mine. The skills I learned were mine. And the pride I felt in doing good work was mine. Mrs. Patterson, a widow in her 70s who'd been running the shop for 40 years, became an unexpected mentor. She noticed things my parents didn't. How quickly I learned, how I anticipated customer needs, how I improved every arrangement I touched. "You've got an eye," she told me one Saturday afternoon as I finished a wedding bouquet. "And steady hands. But more than that, you've got work ethic. That'll take you further than talent ever will." It was the first time an adult had seen something special in me that didn't come with qualifications or comparisons to Emily. At home, my academic success continued to be acknowledged but never celebrated. When I made National Honor Society junior year, Mom put the certificate on the refrigerator next to Emily's participation ribbon from tennis camp. Equal space, equal importance in the family narrative. But my English teacher, Miss Rodriguez, saw something more. She started giving me extra books to read, challenging me with advanced assignments, encouraging me to enter writing contests. When I won second place in a statewide essay competition, she made sure the school newspaper covered it. At home, the reaction was predictable. "Second place," Dad said, scanning the article. "That's great, honey. Who got first?" Always who got first. Never celebration of what I'd achieved. Just curiosity about what I'd missed. Meanwhile, when Emily made varsity tennis her senior year, not as a starter, just on the team, our parents acted like she'd won Wimbledon. They bought her new equipment, attended every match, and turned her end-of-season banquet into a family celebration. The disparity in college planning was where the favoritism reached its peak cruelty. By the time we both entered college, the gap was no longer just material. It was an entire difference in worldview. Emily and I were both admitted to a university in New York. I chose communications while Emily pursued business management. From the very beginning, my parents announced that they would cover all of Emily's tuition and living expenses because they believed she was worth the investment to succeed. "As for me," my father said bluntly, "you're independent. You're good at handling things yourself. FAFSA and scholarships should be enough." And so I was thrown into a whirlwind of debt and part-time jobs. I filled out FAFSA forms, applied for scholarships, and worked at the university library. By day, I attended classes. By night, I shelved books, manned the front desk, and even emptied trash bins. Those nights were long. I would type away at essays, then collapse at the desk, tears slipping down my face with no one to tell. Meanwhile, Emily lived like a little princess in the heart of the city. She had her own apartment rented by our parents, and they sent her monthly allowances without fail. On weekends, I saw her photos on Instagram, dressed in glamorous outfits, a cocktail in hand, her smile shining among her friends at lavish parties. And me? On those same weekends, I was working the night shift at a small diner near campus. I washed dishes until my hands cracked, the smell of grease clinging to me. When the customers finally left, I would sink into a chair in the kitchen, tilt my head back to the stained ceiling, and whisper to myself, "Do my parents even realize I'm just trying to survive each day?" Late at night in the dorm, when my roommate was already fast asleep, I would still be hunched over my old laptop, typing away, my eyes swollen from crying and studying at the same time. There were moments when I felt so hopeless I wanted to give up entirely. But then I would remember that little girl I once was, sitting in a dark room, clutching an old book to her chest, whispering to herself, "One day I'll escape this favoritism." That memory pulled me back to my feet. It reminded me that I could not collapse. I had to prove my worth not to my parents but to myself. Emily's experience was the complete opposite. For her, college was like a never-ending festival. I once overheard her bragging that she had never worried about money in her life, that whenever she ran out, all it took was one phone call and mom would immediately transfer more. The exams I studied for until exhaustion. Emily prepared for with private tutors paid for by our parents. She joined student clubs, went on weekend trips, and attended glamorous galas. My weekends, meanwhile, were spent working late-night shifts, barely catching restless naps at the library desk between assignments. The comparisons stared me in the face every single day. Some mornings, as I dragged myself out of the library after a night shift, my eyes bloodshot, I would see Emily and her friends strutting by, dressed to the nines, ready for yet another party. Emily would glance at me, throw a half-smile that stung more than words, and keep walking. Shame and anger would rise in me, but I kept my head down and moved forward because deep down I knew my path would never be the same as hers. I survived those years with a resilience I didn't even know I possessed. Yes, I cried countless times. There were nights when my pillow was soaked with tears, but every morning, I still got up, stepped outside, and kept fighting. I believed with everything in me that one day all of this effort would be worth it. I silently promised myself that no matter what, I would not let my family's favoritism define who I was. That's where today's episode ends. But the story doesn't stop here. The continuation is already waiting for you in the next video on my channel.